All right, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Undeclared. Today we have our friend Steven. Steven has been a pretty good friend of ours for a few years now. Met him during the pandemic, and yeah, it's been a couple of years.
Right.
But yeah, so today we're going to hear about him and how he's a 7th grade teacher and your journey there.
Yeah, definitely.
Without further ado, just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about you.
Yeah, so my name's Steven. I've been a good friend of Josie and Ruben for a couple of years now, and it's been a really good couple of years. We started talking during the pandemic years, and from there we just kind of met up and had parties like almost every weekend during that time. But it was
Yeah.
almost every weekend.
Wait, because I know I joined in late.
Yes.
You joined into the parties later.
Later.
Yeah, later.
So, like, when did these parties start for you guys? Like, right when COVID happened, or?
Oh, no.
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 Kinda.
It's
So, COVID started in
like around
March,
right?
Okay.
It started in March, and that's when they announced, it's going to be like 2 weeks
Yeah.
of this stuff, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe March, April, May. I remember I finished the school year because at the time I was working in education as well. We finished the school year, so in June, I think
It was a little bit past that.
you think so?
Yeah, it was a little bit past that because during the pandemic year, like the first year of pandemic, I wasn't talking to Leanne just yet. And Leanne's one of our other good friends. Actually, one of the other reasons why I know you guys.
Yeah.
I remember we went to this party in the park, and we were celebrating someone's birthday, and that's when I first met you. And then
What?
Yeah.
Who's Park?
Oh,
Park.
yes, it was someone's birthday, and at the time, that's when I first met you. It's a long time ago.
It was
But
like a couple years ago.
yeah,
I don't
couple
remember
years-
this at all. I don't remember a park.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
He's like, this is so
I think it's like-
memorable for me, but not for you.
Yeah, and I just remember I first met you there because it was someone who we were friends with back then, and after that it just kind of like trickled on to later down the line of COVID years.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I don't want to get into too much detail with
Mm-hmm.
that, but I just remembered first meeting you there, and then around 4th of July, that's when I first started talking to Leanne again, and I started talking to her, and then we brought in you and EJ and everyone there, and then that's when I think like a month and a half later, or that's when we actually started getting together, and then I think like half a year later.
No, because I remember in September, we were already so tight, we went to Tahoe.
Yes.
So
yes.
it had to have been early on.
So I definitely know, I started talking to Leanne 4th of July. So within July to September, because we went to Tahoe.
But we were already hanging out by
right.
July.
Right. So we were very close.
We got really close really fast.
Really
the whole
close.
entire group.
Yeah.
It was like maybe it's 12 of us.
12 of us.
Remember?
Yeah, we just went to Tahoe that day or that weekend.
That weekend.
It was just crazy. It's just a crazy weekend.
That was a crazy
Nice.
weekend.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, when I first met you, it was like two, almost 3 years ago. And what was it? Like, when I had conversations about you trying to get into education.
Right.
And like the back and forth of like, I don't know what to do, and the whole struggles with school and all that. And it's just great to see that like now you're in your position that you always wanted to be.
Yeah.
So like, tell me, did you always wanted to be a teacher? Or
Absolutely not. And I'll be straight up honest with you. Absolutely not. And it's not because it was my backup plan. I don't want anyone to think that, if you don't have anywhere to go, that's like your backup plan. Like, absolutely not. But what I do know is that when I was around sophomore, junior year in college, I started teaching dance a lot. I was an instructor for like studios, and I enjoyed just seeing people learn, seeing people like,
Progress and all
progress,
that.
exactly. And it just gives me, like this gratifying feeling like, you guys are like progressing, you guys are, developing all your skills like as a dancer and all that. So I've had experience like teaching before, like in a sense, like out of like the school scene. And then so in my head, like my biggest goal was to really perform, and that's why I was performing in Great America, performing
that's
for
right.
like
Yeah, yeah.
different places. So that was my goal, and it's still my goal to this day. But sometimes life takes you in a different path. For now, you know, and so I just remember I have a friend who was a teacher. He's now a DA for like Fresno. He told me like, listen, you teach kids and adults alike, and you like teaching and you like dance, right? So he was like, why don't you get a teaching credential and a master's in dance, right? And at the time, like for many years of him telling me to get my credential and master's, I told him like, no, it's not for me. It's not like my cup of tea, essentially. And then it just kind of, you know, I just went through this motion of like living day to day, kind of like I gotta work, I gotta get paid, and you know, I go to places with the money that I earn.
Yeah.
But I was very stagnant, you know. It just felt like I didn't really have any directions. Like I had a goal in mind, but with everything that's happening in my life, it just felt like I just need to go day by day for now, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eventually,
And you have your bachelor's in dance, right?
yes. So I have a bachelor's in dance. I graduated in 2017 at San Jose State, and that's, you know, that's my one of the best goals that I've ever had. It's kind of hard to sometimes say it because people look at you like, oh, you have a dance degree, like what are you gonna get, or what kind of job are you gonna get with that, like, you know? And for those who are listening, don't ever let that deter you from like going anywhere else.
Yeah, of
because like, yeah, I have a dance degree, but I'm a science teacher right now, and my kids love me. I hope my kids love me.
Yeah.
And you know, I keep telling my students like I love learning, and so whether it is dance or science, like just keep doing what you do.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, a dance degree in bachelor's in dance degree.
So you're getting your master's in dance now.
Actually, no. I'm getting my master's in educational technology. So
Oh.
yeah. So
I didn't even know that was such a thing.
yeah.
I had no idea.
So like media, like digital media.
Technology. So educational technology is essentially teaching with the use of like current technologies, modern technology. So like, how do we use
Chromebooks and MacBooks.
Chromebooks, but also like
iPads.
right now I'm in a course where we're using current technologies, and some of the course loads that we're taking is about how do we use AR, virtual reality in classes, how do we use robotics, how do we use coding to teach students, and then how does that relate to the subject that you're teaching. So for me, because I'm teaching science, it's easier for me to say, well, I can teach with AR, like artificial reality and virtual reality with science, because we can use that for like showing students how things are without having to like show them in person to say. So to clarify on that, like in biology class, sometimes you would use a cadaver or you know, like a cat cadaver or like a frog to like do dissection. With artificial and virtual reality in my master's program, we're learning about how to use like virtual reality to do those kind of things. Like how do we do dissection using virtual reality? So we don't use like real cadaver anymore.
It's all online.
Yeah, it's all online.
So
but
no
it's
owl
also
pellets for you guys?
Oh no, we still do. We're actually doing that sometime in the next month in my class. So obviously, like we still want to do things that are hands-on,
Still physical,
tangible.
yeah.
Yes.
But also including current technology to kind of keep up with the times. And so, yeah, my master's is specifically on educational technology and how we can use current technologies, modern technologies to better give students experience with, you know, or their education in general.
Oh, nice.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's definitely a fun program, I would say, with the course load and like having to teach full-time, both, you know, in school and as a student full-time. It's definitely a lot, but it's like the gratifying feeling of learning and like seeing students at the same time like, progressing.
Because like when you talk about this, you can see the passion.
Right, exactly.
Right. And I want to like go back to a point that you made earlier, right? Because you said you got your bachelor's degree in dance, right? And a lot of people might view this and be like, what the heck do you do with that? I'm curious to know, right? Because I want to bridge, right? From where you were at probably in your younger years, right? Thinking about dance and seeing that transition into now the teacher. So in your youth, right? Youth being like elementary, maybe middle school, high school, in that time, how did you view education and in terms of like your future?
Right. So I immigrated here around 2003. I was in third grade when I first came here, and education was always like, something that I have to make sure I do, right? It's not something like, oh, do I get a choose like a choice to like do it or not? Like, no, I just felt like I have to do it because it's good for me. And I still think to this day, like, like that was a good decision to like think about. But with education, I just felt like, all right, I know my stuff. I know my English. Well, at the time, I was still currently learning English, so I was like in after school program to like kind of catch myself up with English. But with Tagalog and English, it was kind of an easy transition because Filipinos, they're a little bit more aware of what English language are in their country, in our country, right? And so the transition wasn't too long. It was just like less than a year. So it was really nice. I still have trouble with English to say, but
it's the ESL in us. It's okay. I feel you.
Exactly.
I feel you.
And so after a while, I just kind of like, all right, education's my thing. I just got to go through it and then make sure that I get good education. And then, hopefully from there, I get where I need to be later on. Eventually, I just, I think it was like around high school, freshman year, because I was so settled with like the quote unquote American life and American education that I was like, okay, I'm doing well, I can slack off. And I think that was like the problem, is that I had that mentality like, I'm doing well, I can slack off. And it didn't really work out well for me because I started like failing some of my class. Well, not failing, but I had high expectations for myself, like always A students, right? And so sophomore and junior year, I started getting like B's and C's, and it was like such a downgrade from like what my expectations were on myself.
Yeah.
And so by senior year, I tried to really catch up. Truth be told, I barely did, but I still did it. And so it's a very big like contradictory thing from like how I am back when I was, in youth. So education now is like such a big important thing, especially like teaching kids. Like you have to model it for them that you love learning and teaching, for them to understand like, oh yeah, this is something that I should do as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what kind of want to know, like, what was the support at home?
What was the support at home?
In terms of like going and making that transition, or was there any like outside expectations set for you?
So my mom was actually a teacher as well, or she was, my mom was like essentially like the Wonder Woman of my life. She had a business degree in Philippines, I think. She had a nursing. I'm not entirely sure if this is right. So, but I know that she did business. She owned her own business. She had an accounting, something like that. Did some nursing, and then when she came here, she has 2 bachelors,
Wow.
a master's, and then
Mom.
yeah. So she was like, I'm basically my mom's son. Like I'm not saying I'm following her footstep.
Well, you
but,
are your mom's son.
Right.
Yeah, but
like in essence, it's like everything that she did.
You're following her footsteps.
Right.
Or you're trying to.
But I also wanted to make sure that I was doing it for my own reason, not just for her, even though it's such a big important thing that I follow in her footstep and like what she did.
So you can say that she was encouraging you going further in your education.
And she definitely got on my butt for like saying like, why is your grade like this? Like, I know you could do better. And especially because she's a math teacher, the last couple of years, she really was on me. It's like, you can do algebra and all that. It's like, I know I can, and I just don't get it right now, So it was
She's
those
just
kind
like-
of situations where
She's like, tutor right here.
yeah,
Resource. Yes.
yeah, exactly. And so, it was like tough love, like, those tough love kind of thing where she was hard on me, but she knew what she was doing because she did everything for our family, basically. You know,
Yeah.
she came from like a poor background. She raised 4 kids by herself, and then she eventually like moved us here. Throughout that time, she was a manager, or sorry, an owner of an actual bar. And she was doing nursing, and then she went here. She did all her masters and bachelors and all that. All the meantime, like she was raising us by herself, and so it was very inspiring to see that. And so following in that footstep was like, you know, and obviously making it my own in the process.
So it sounds like furthering education was no doubt about it. It was part of the plan,
Exactly.
right? Going into college, getting your bachelor's degree in
Exactly.
dance, something that you were passionate about.
Yeah.
And then it growing into education, right? Teaching, loving to learn. It's part of who you are.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I definitely remembered my mom saying, like, I want you to have a good education, you know, all that, going to 4-year college. I did get some hesitation when they heard that I wanted to be in theater and then moved on to dance. Like that's just like the reality of it, because I came from a family that were high expecting of me. And like at the time, and this is nothing, like, I'm not trying to like, you know, talk bad about like what they said. But it definitely pushed me to do what I love even more. Because dance was at the time seems like, what are you going to get into the D? So going back to what I said earlier, like some people, like my English teacher, very cool. She was like one of my inspiration as well. But she did ask me like, what are you going to do with a dance degree, right? Throughout the time in college when I had my dance degree, or when I was getting my dance degree, the only thing that was really on my mind was, I know how to dance. I love to dance, and this is what makes me happy. And so, getting my dance degree was a testament of do what you love to do in the process. And eventually, people really do find that, like, okay, I can see that you really work hard for this, and you deserved it. And so, eventually, people like, oh, okay. So that really shouldn't illustrate or depict me as like the person to only work in the dance scene, because right now I'm in the teaching scene. So,
Yes.
Right.
No, but it's amazing to see that transition, because they relate. They relate, right?
Right.
Dancing is teaching. You're in teaching. Now, going back into education, right? Being a teacher. What do you teach right now?
I teach science, 7th grade. So I teach
Oh,
a
that's
lot.
so fun.
Yeah. So it's really fun because like these kids, they're funny in their own way, but they're also like kind of crazy. I used to teach 9th grade.
I got stories.
So I used to teach 9th grade, and so when I was teaching 9th grade, all my kids were like very quiet. They were like fresh out of middle school into into high school. And so they were still kind of like also coming out of like the pandemic years. So it was very different to go from like very quiet 9th graders to like crazy 7th graders. But yeah, I love them so much because they're like.
Was that for dance?
Sorry, what?
Teaching 9th graders for dance?
No, for biology.
Oh, so when did you make the transition to 7th grade?
It was
Oh, that was like this year.
this year.
So last year you were teaching 9th grade?
9th grade, yeah.
Dang. And do you see the difference? Of
Absolutely.
I didn't know you were
between-
teaching already last year.
Because it's like also 9th grade, right? It's just them being fresh, but like with middle school, it's a different breed. Like I know 11, 12, and 13 might sound young, but like when you're in the middle school scene, it's not that young, like where they're babies, because they're trying to act older than they are, right? And for me, I'm in the special education scene,
Right.
so, and I've been teaching the middle schoolers, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders for about 2 years now. So it's just like crazy what's going on, and like just noticing the different behaviors of middle schoolers in comparison to like elementary versus high school. But hands down, I would still choose middle school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I I've always wanted to teach high schoolers.
Mm-hmm.
And I still do.
Mm-hmm.
But after like going through such a roller coaster of like a month and a half with my middle schoolers,
Mm-hmm.
it definitely is a lot more fun.
Mhm.
They're definitely energetic.
So you going from 9th grade to 7th grade, and that's so like, what are the qualifications you needed in order to even get in there? Because I was under the impression that you needed a teaching credential to even start doing any of this,
Mhm.
right? Unless you worked at like a private school and they were okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get in?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the biggest things that I still have to tackle today. Again, going back to like, I have a dance degree. How are you qualified? What are you going to get with that?
Mm-hmm.
So it was around 2020, basically when the pandemic first started. I was working for one of these companies as a teacher's aide / after school teacher person, right?
With Leanne, right?
Yeah, with Leanne.
Yeah.
So I work with one of my friends. She got me that job, wonderful job. And I got to teach the little kids and help the teachers teach their
Mhm.
little kids, right? And that was when I first really got into the scene of like teaching kids in a
Mhm.
classroom setting, albeit it wasn't like a full classroom. And at the time, I was trying to figure out like, what am I gonna do with my life right now? And I just remember telling Leanne and one of our friends, Bailey, I told them, you know what? I want to be a teacher before I turned 30. I was
Mhm.
28 at the time, so
Mhm.
that was essentially last year. And so by the time, it was around April of 2021, I just remembered I'm gonna do it. So I went into the website, applied for it, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And when I was applying, one of the requirement was you have to have your CSET, which is subject.
The multi-subject
For this one, it's like the single subject one, right?
Oh, yes.
Because I wanted to do biology.
for
I wanted-
higher.
Exactly.
educate-
For secondary, high school, secondary subject like middle school and high school, you have to have the single subject, which is, for this particular case, I wanted to do biology.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And it's basically like a qualification saying that
The
what you're-
subject.
Exactly. And I'll be honest right now, I still don't have that. And that's
Yeah.
what's stripping me over. Because when I did like the whole entire credential program, I went through everything that I needed to do. One of the biggest things that we had to do was the EdTPA, which is basically teacher performance assessment. It's like this really big assessment that shows if you know how to teach,
Your
like
competency and all that stuff.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And thankfully, like I actually knew what I was doing, so I passed the first time, and it was actually relieving because during our time, because it was a pandemic, there was a lot of stipulations like make sure that you don't do this, make sure you don't do that, and it was stressful.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to be a teacher at that time, and I was like, I needed to really focus on this.
Yeah.
So when I finally got to my 9th grade classroom,
Mm-hmm.
it was a student teacher position. So
Mhm.
I wasn't
Oh,
like
got
the
it.
actual teacher,
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
but I did take over one of the class as their teacher. So the last period, 6th period, they would have me as their teacher rather than their teacher themselves.
So you're like shadowing the teacher for the majority of the time, taking notes,
Mhm.
and then like
Mhm.
going over different teaching methods with
Mhm.
them. And this is the single subject because sped and the way that I have it right now are
Mhm.
completely different.
Mhm.
And then you pick a period, and that's your entire class.
Exactly.
And then the teacher, who I don't want to say owns the class, but is credentialed for that class,
Right.
is observing you to give you pointers of like, how are you performing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what I did as a student teacher. I would watch her for first all the way to 5th period, because there was 6 periods, right? And I would take her 6th period. And from there, I would learn, all the strategies for teaching a class and all that. So, when I was doing my EdTPA, trying to get all my qualifications done, it was definitely hard, but I was determined to be a teacher by 30. That was like my goal, my ultimate goal, to be a teacher. And I
Mhm.
actually reached that because I was like, I'm 29. I'm like 1 year away from 30, which is very weird to think about it right now. But
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
you know, I told myself I wanted to be a teacher. So I did
Mm-hmm.
all my qualification, my credential. The only thing that I don't have right now is a CSET, which is the subject competency.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that I don't know what I'm doing. I actually do know. It's just for technicality and formality, I have to make sure that I have that on my file.
It's just one of those paperwork things. And now
Exactly.
there's one thing, and I don't know if you know this,
Yeah.
and for people who do want to pursue education,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a bachelor's degree, right, and you took college courses, right now, especially in the state of California, you can do something where it's like coursework equivalency, right?
Okay.
So basically, you talk to the college that you're, studying at, working with, and they evaluate your course load from your bachelor's and determine
yes.
if any of those classes meets the requirement,
right.
Because I guess now they realize, they're like, why should I show what I know when I earn the degree
Exactly.
that says, that I have the knowledge and the skills.
Exactly. So that's what a lot of my colleagues that I went through credential program with, majority of them have a degree in science, biology, chemistry, whatnot. And during the time of my credential with them, they were trying to fix the situation where, like you said, why do we have to do the CSET, which is a big test, to show what we know when for 4 years, 3 or 4 years, that's what I've been learning about. So it was only till last July that they finally said, listen, we're going to waive that, which means if we can see based on your course load from the last 3 or 4 years that you've done it and it meets our criteria, then you don't have to take that test, And so that's what a lot of the teachers now are so thankful about, because, they don't have to take the test.
So have you have anything waived yet? Did you get anything waived?
So I did not have to get anything waived because, again, I have a bachelor's in dance, so it's definitely different. Now, if I did go into the PE direction, I'm pretty much a PE teacher set. All I have to do is take one semester methods class, which is like how to teach in a PE class. That's it. And I'm a full PE/dance teacher.
Why did you just do that?
That's a good question. I actually had people saying that to me. In the sense of like, the longevity of my career, science teachers are needed everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of how I got this job, is because they needed science teacher, and I love science. I actually told my we had a professional development person, and that professional development mentor was actually one of the science teacher back when I was in high school. So I met up with her, or I told her like, hey, I remember you. You and Mr. Ferdine was like my teacher back then. And she's like, oh, no way. And so going back to it, I told them like, I really love science, and you guys were the reason why I love science. So going back to it now and like teaching science or PE or dance, like I chose science first because I knew in the longevity it would help me like kind of be stable, and then from there build myself to where, okay, I can get an add-on, which is, or I don't know, I forgot what it's called, but like you basically add on to more credentials that you have. So right now I'm finishing up the science, but maybe in the next year or two I can get a add-on to where I can teach PE and dance as well. So for now,
I won't become like a multi-subject.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So do you
So
have to get a second credential, or you just take
no. So I just have to take, just like how I have to finish the CSAT, like the competency test for science, I have to do the same for PE. But because I was a dance major, I got that way because I practically,
coursework showed that you've fulfilled that requirement.
Right. I mean,
so it's not waived as in you don't do it or whatever.
It
just shows that yes, you
Exactly.
fulfilled the requirement through coursework.
Exactly. And it depends on what kind of school you're in, school and district, because some district might say, oh, your dance degree fulfills the dance part, but not the PE. So we can give you as a, become a dance teacher. But kind of looking back at it, I don't want to say that science is more important than dance. I think dance and art is just as important as science. But in my head, I was like, I need to be
Stable.
I need to find something that can easily get me a job.
Wherever
That's
you
something that I also love to do. And so science was like a perfect match to it. And then later down the line, I want to eventually do dance. Right now, the most performance that I'm doing is I joined the theater group or the drama club, or not. I don't want to say drama club because it's an actual performance that they're doing this year. And it's going back to my roots of performing and all that. So hopefully by the time I'll get more experience to go back into dancing again.
Okay.
So question, because I know for Josie it's a little bit different. She's talked to me about it, but when it comes to creating the curriculum, who creates it, and how do you get it? Do you create it?
No, that's a good question. So I actually do not create it. So in my district, in my school, we have this curriculum that we use. It comes from this website called Amplify. Basically, the district buys it, and then all the curriculum's there. All we have to do is just,
Execute it.
Yeah, load it and teach it the way it is. Because all the curriculum based on like the standards that meets, the
State standards.
Like the state standard.
Yeah.
It's all there. And so all we really have to do is load it up, make sure it makes sense to us and what we're doing, why we're doing it. And then from there, we just teach it the way. Now, there's two ways to go about how we use Amplify. It's what we use for science. Math had like this thing called Learn and so forth, right? For Amplify, it's really just like, in the basis of it all, there's like a phenomena, like something that we're trying to figure out. And if we really just want it to be as simple as possible, we can just load up this slides that that they made for us, and we teach it like that. But for me, because I wanted to make sure that my students are understanding it in the way that I'm seeing it as well, and that it can make sense to them without feeling like it's an overwhelming amount of like words that they don't know. I would usually take the curriculum itself, and I would sometimes copy and paste some of the slides that they've already done, or I would take the slides and I would redo it. Yeah, modify, exactly. I would redo it in my own way so that I can give it to my students in a way that I understand it and that they can understand it as well. So as far as curriculum goes,
it's already established. It's
exactly
provided to you.
So what happens is like, because I have.
But what about for you?
For me, it's similar in the sense of we adopt curriculum, and a lot of the curriculum is research based and it's board certified, right? So the curriculum, right, meets Common Core standards. So it's not just something that you find online, and it's just like, oh, you know what, we're just gonna buy this, right? For us, we adopt the curriculum that meets Common Core standards. And because I'm a special education teacher, the number one thing that we focus on is differentiating instruction. So the way that you're modifying your instruction so that your students can understand the material and have it truly sink in. For us, we get curriculum and we even modify it even a little bit more to meet their particular needs. This year, I'm teaching reading, right? So for students who are struggling with reading and writing or spelling, and we're talking about like going back to the basics, right? What are the sounds of letters, right? Phonetic structures, phonological awareness, all of that. Learning how to write the letter. So again, a lot of my students are also English language learners. So you truly have to take the time, read a word, read a letter, read a sentence before you can even read a paragraph. So that's generally, and what I notice in the Bay Area, a lot of schools are moving into like adopting curriculum that's research based, but it's never discouraged to adjust it
exactly
what's needed because that's your specialty. Right.
It almost sounds like it's easy to be a single subject teacher?
Definitely. I would say, based on what I heard, and I'm not saying like multiple subjects is like harder or easier in essence, but I do work with someone who used to be a multiple subject, and I heard from her that there's a lot of preparing because you're not teaching just one subject, you're teaching like multiple, and you have to like have some objective for them every single day, something that they will work on. And in my head, like, I teach 7th grade only, and I teach only one subject. So all I have to make sure to do is to have that one day objective for the entire week, yes. The entire subject and entire grade. So I'm very specific on like what to do. But like with multiple subject, it's like every single class subject, and for all of that, you have to make sure you're adopting all of the common core standards, and that you're accommodating and modifying things for your students
with special needs.
Yes. Exactly. So for us, it's like, at least for me, because not only am I teaching one subject, but I'm also teaching one grade level. Yeah. It's easy for me to just hone in on what they need. And if I have to modify things, I can just modify it to where it works both for a specific student, but also works for the entire student. So kind of like, if I were to modify one for the student, I want to make sure that it also makes sense for the others. Yeah. So it's not detrimental for them to like, how come we're hearing something different from him to them, but like not to us,
Because also the department has to match up.
Right.
So you meet with your department. If you're science, you meet with your science department, and you talk about like, what are the common core standards we are going to target, so that in the case of students meeting up with each other, they are on the same page or similar page, so that they can learn from each other as well.
Right. Now, can someone that's a single subject and then someone who's a multiple, can they switch?
Yeah.
Can someone be like, so for your instance, can you go into a single subject and can you just jump into a multiple subject teaching position?
I'm not sure if like jumping quickly is the right way to do it, because I know the person that I'm actually working with right now, she's my I'm forgetting the word, but she used to teach multiple subjects. What she did to get into the single subject was take a methods class, because she'd done like the EdGPA, a methods class.
A methods, okay.
Yeah, so she'd done the methods class, which is how to teach that specific subject class. She had the degree and CSET, certified, and she'd done the EdGPA, which is the teacher performance assessment. So with all that, all she really had to do was take a single subject methods class to get into the single subject to teach science. Same goes for me. If I wanted to teach multiple subject, I would need to take a multiple subject methods class, get my CSET. So it's kind of like you just need to take the methods class to switch from single subject to multiple and multiple to single. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it, yeah. But in the essence, like, that's how we've been told, like, you can go from multiple to single or single to multiple.
Well, that's nice to know, because if someone like you, in instance, can get burnt out, or you're become unhappy with that, there is potential to move. You're not stuck.
True, but let's be honest. Let's talk about burnout for teachers, because being a teacher is a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And like I want to hear from you, because have you felt the burnout?
Oh, yes.
Because you just entered right into teaching, but like how is that coming alive? Because we hear a lot of stories.
Oh, yeah.
About being a teacher. A lot of teachers have it hard. What's sad is, and one of my coworkers was telling me, it was like a study that she saw, that like parents do not want their kids to be teachers, because they realize like it's tough. Yeah.
I just want to say, like, teaching is such a gratifying, like, job. Like, even though it seems like it's the hardest thing in the world, without, all the representation that we get in the media, like, it's such a gratifying feeling to, like, teach kids. But burnt out wise, it's definitely there. Personally, for me, it's starting to get there. Now, there are days where I'm just like, oh my God, like, I don't get what's going on with these kids. Like, am I doing something wrong? It's really just like I'm trying to figure out like how to better get a hold of them and how I can like better teach them, because in the end process, I really want to make sure that the students are learning, but my personal goal for them is that they become good people. Like, I could teach you all about biology or ecology, all that matters. But in the process, if you can show me that you're going to be a good person when you leave my class, that's great. If you can show me that you can have better study habits or work habits when you leave this class, great, because that will follow you through. You might not remember what a dissection lab would be, but knowing how or having good work ethics will follow you through. It's not just in school, but in later on.
Yes, and that's why teachers say it's all about, in order to have meaningful learning, you need meaningful relationships with students so that learning could be effective.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, what kind of qualities does an individual need to be a teacher?
Definitely patience. There's so many times where I have to yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have to do that like breathing like with the hand fingers things, right? There was one day, I think 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
One of my kids was just like acting up in class, and like she was going through something, but I didn't know that until a day later. I'm not going to go into specific details what happened, but when I heard what was happening to her, it's like, I wish she told me something was happening, because then I would have been able to better approach you. In the for context, she was kind of acting out. She was
she was screaming for help.
Yeah, she was giving me attitude, and I was like, why are you doing this? And to the point where it was so distracting, it really was apparent throughout the entire class.
Yeah.
It got to the point I just broke, and I was just like, and I felt like I picked on her. And then I was like, okay, wait. And so I had to take breathing moment, to the point where I kept breathing. I almost wanted to cry, because I was like, what is happening? What's going on? Like, that's when I first really felt like I was burning out. Like, why is this happening? These kids are getting used to me. But in the process, like these kids are also like acting out in my class, and I've never seen that in the past couple of weeks. So,
but it's strange, and this is like, because a lot of my kids, right, special education, you hear every kind of story, right? I have students who may have lost a family member, students who just found housing, students who are going through mental struggles, and like, the craziest thing, even though this student is acting out in the most absurd ways. Like, I'm talking about moaning in the teacher's ear. I'm talking about trying to fight during a class, or scream, yell, make weird noises, anything, right? They feel safe in your classroom. Yeah. To the point that they can act like that. Right. They just struggle with communicating of like, I feel helpless. I feel insecure. I don't know who to go to, because a lot of families, and especially this is a theme that I'm hearing this year, is that parents or guardians are giving up on their student, right, or on their child, and they don't know who to reach out to listen. And a lot of it is like, my teacher and whoever I feel safe with, I want to tell them, but I just don't know how.
Right. Yeah. And so with this particular student that I'm talking about, she's going through family problems, and I didn't want to get into that. But, when I was assessing the problem and trying to figure out like what was going on in the process, it did feel like, in hindsight, like I was picking on her. Come to find out later on that something happened and she was going through it. But had I known that what was happening with her, I could have better assessed it. So throughout that time, it just felt like, what could I have done better? How could I have the student just directly tell me like, hey, something's going on with me. If you can just like not, bother me or something in that manner, like, that would really help. But, after that, after hearing what she went through or is going through still, I finally kind of reached out to her again. And I told her, hey, listen, if you need to like walk outside or like you need something, let me know. And then, so this past week, this entire week, she's been like in such a better mood now. She feels safe again. And you know, when kids feel safe, like you said, they would act out in a way where it's like, you know, they feel like they can kind of own the class again. You know, like
Yeah.
for this kid, she loves learning. She's a good student, you know, and it was just that one time, like when she acted out, like it just felt so wrong, you know. But now she's acting in her normal self, you know, still goofy, still like very smart kid and all that, but it's not like giving me attitudes anymore, which is great.
So not only having patience for your students,
Exactly.
right, but also being
compassionate
and just being ready to like act with empathy and sympathy, right?
Right. Yeah. So for those who are thinking of going to the teaching, it's teaching you a lot. Like being a teacher, it's also putting you in the student's position because you're the student as well.
You're like you're like a therapist.
Yeah. You know, like you essentially are also a student in your own class. You're learning about your students, right? And I'm a student in the master's program, so I know all about what it takes to be in a class where I am expected to like do all this and this and this. Meanwhile, I tell my students to do this and this and this. And so for me, looking at that is like, all right, in my master's program, I have to do all of this courses and assignment. How do I feel? If I apply that to my teaching, if I tell my student do this, this, and this, how would they feel? And it's so kind of like putting myself in their shoe. So again, like having empathy for like what, or, you know, your students, having patience for who they are.
And perceptive, being perceptive.
Right. And in essence, maybe it's just personally for me, but I give them tough love. Sometimes I just have to give them tough love, even if I don't like it. I'm that type of person who like wants to please everyone. I'm a people pleaser. But sometimes it's getting to me where I need to make sure these kids know, like, I love them. But, like, honey, you need to act up.
Being firm but kind.
Right. You have to be, like, firm and kind. You have to be strict but reasonable. Right? And in the essence of it, they respect you for doing that. And you have to have consistency. Again, for those who want to be in the teaching path, consistency is key. Kids would always want to make sure that they know what they're doing. And the only way they know what they're doing is if you know what you're doing and they're doing it consistently. It takes a while for me to like, you know, even to this day, it's been like a month and a half now since I've been teaching my kids. And to this day, I'm still working on consistency. It's a learning process for me as well. You know, how I run my class, like, okay, let's do this from now on. It's like, okay, I don't like that. I would tell my students, hey guys, like, this is not working for me. It's not you, it's me, and I apologize for that. Thank you for being like, you know, open and versatile and adapted for what I'm doing. This is a learning process for me as well. You know, it's my first year teaching 7th graders. It's my first year teaching by myself. Right. So it's a learning process for me, and so all the things that we're doing is very experimental. And my kids, because they know that you're being truthful to them and that you're, you know, you have the
you're being real.
You're being real. You have the most good intention for them. They understand, and my students understand that. So for the past month, I've been switching seats like almost every other week. And they're like, oh, we have new seats. Like, I'm just moving you guys around just so that...
Just to see.
Right. And
just for now.
Exactly. And I would tell them, like, oh, did you move the tables again? Like, yeah, I actually did. It's like, why? It's like, oh, I want to try things out. And you guys are so good at, like, listening. So
and adapting.
Exactly. And so they quickly do that. Now, there are times where it's like, Mr. Steven, can I sit next to my friends? Like, no. Like, there are times where I want to make you guys sit next to each other, but today, not so much.
Today.
Especially when I have to do a role and I don't know where you sit. Like, you have to sit down. So, you have to be very real with your students because these students, they're, at least for my students, they're 7th graders. They're like 12, 13-year-old. They can smell BS from a mile away. And if you don't, if you let that, like, be apparent, they'll walk over you, like, all over you.
Now, speaking about being real, and this is a question that I've kind of had, and I don't, maybe not going to word it correctly, but I'm going to try my best. Now, have you been upfront with them that you have a boyfriend? No, because I'm just about having, like you said, this is a safe place for them.
Right. Yes.
Like, do they know about your personal life a little bit? Because I know Josie talks to her students about her personal life a bit.
Right.
And letting, do they know that this is a safe place for them to go and talk to you for advice or anything like that?
Yeah. For context, the class next door, she's one of the science teacher as well.
Mm-hmm.
She identifies as queer, right? She is the leader of the GSA. We call it Rainbow Club, but basically it's the GSA Gay Straight Alliance Club, right? And she advocates for free, safe, inclusive space, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always visit there, and so the students would see me during that meeting. And I have a big rainbow flag in my room, so there have been times where students like, Mr. Steven, like, do you have a wife? Like, I have a life. As far as
that you don't need to know about.
So as far as like being real with them, I did tell there were in the beginning, because I didn't know how open I can be with the students yet. It was obviously me still learning like what the boundaries of like telling
Teacher
my
to
personal life.
student,
Exactly. So in the beginning, truthfully, I said, you don't need to know that. Like, I'm not going to tell you, right? Like, in essence, I also want to make sure that my partner, Mark, he's okay with me sharing that, right? And it really didn't, it hadn't really come up between me and him, but, I'm okay with telling that. And so I think a couple weeks after, so my students asked me that, like, hey, Mr. Steven, do you have a girlfriend? Like, you don't need to know that. That was like maybe like the second week of school. Maybe like third on to fourth. They're like, Mr. Steven, do you have a wife and all that? Like, no. Like, Mr. Steven, are you like gay or something? And I would tell them I am queer, right? I didn't specify into it because, again, I'm still learning like the boundaries of like what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have every right to be like, this is not a conversation that I want in the second week.
Right.
Once I learn your name and learn your seating chart,
right, exactly.
then
Maybe
let's talk about it.
Right. And so the person that is next door to me, she's like, everyone knows her as, she, they person, all that. And she is the Rainbow Club mentor, right? She identifies as queer and she just say it right there. And so for me, when I was asking her like, hey, what do I say when a student asks me if I'm gay or whatnot? And she was like, well, it's kind of like the same as like when heterosexual would say, oh yeah, my husband or my wife is blah, blah, blah. And like our kids, like you should be able to be upfront and say like easily, like, yeah, my boyfriend, like blah, 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 blah. And I totally agree. Like that's being truthful and that's being honest with your student. I also have to like make sure that it feels right to me to say like, yeah, like my boyfriend and all that, because I don't want to just like give out information right away, especially if these kids are still learning about themselves. Now, granted, I do have like some non-binary and like, those gender fluid, sorry, I said those, but like gender fluid students who is still not comfortable sharing that information yet. So I have to like make sure that they understand that, but subtly make sure that I'm with them, like I support them in every way possible. So to answer your question, am I like being real with them? To an extent, and that's because
with boundaries.
Boundaries, exactly. Yeah. I think that's really what's holding me back. It's like and I know my students now, so maybe if they ask again, like I can say like, yeah, I have a boyfriend, blah blah blah. Yeah. But back then I couldn't say it because it felt like it was too much information for my students to know. Yeah. Now my students love getting to know about me, which is great. But in the process, sometimes a little personal. It's like, I don't know how much I can tell you.
No, because you know what students do? They love talking about your personal life. The students love getting to know the teacher's life because some of them really truly care and they
Yes.
want to build that relationship with the teacher. But sometimes they use it to the extent where they're not doing their work in class.
Absolutely.
And they're like, oh, let's just have time pass by. Miss Rodriguez, tell us about your fiance again. What was that one story?
Yeah.
And so I'll be like, that's for a different time. That will be like
Yeah.
probably 5-10 minutes before the bell rings.
Right.
But right now you're doing this.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
You know, kind of a little off topic. I was teaching my students about what inference is or
Mhm.
something like that. And I just remember I made an example of Nicki Minaj's new song, Super Freaky, right? And I just remember I told them, like, yeah, if you guys really hear it, it's the MC Hammer song, like the background. Oh, we're talking about sampling.
Got it.
Sorry, that was it, not inference. We were talking about sampling. I just remember I made that reference and how it sounded like MC Hammer. And like, oh, I know that song, right? And then they're like, Mr. Steven, can you play that song? It's like, absolutely not. That's inappropriate.
Yeah.
And then they would ask me, like, do you like those type of songs? Like, absolutely, I love those songs. I have a life. And that's where they got into the idea. It's like, you have a wife? Like, Mr. Steven, you have a wife? Like, what? And so the entire class just
Kind of
went
was
crazy.
yeah.
Like, Mr. Steven, can we see your wife? Like, guys, this is for another day. And I'm not saying anything else besides that, you know,
Yeah.
because I don't want to like lead them on
Yeah.
thinking that I do have a wife.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also don't want them to get discouraged, like from them getting to know me even
Because
more.
it's like
as of
probably
right now,
a game.
Yeah.
As of right now, they think you have a wife
I hope not.
and not a life. Just
Yeah.
a wife.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
wife and a life. As of right now, they know that I'm queer. Like I
Yeah.
told them, like I'm queer, because one of them asked me, and they somehow most of them heard me, and I said it quietly too, because you know this girl was in the corner, and she asked, "Mr. Steven, do you have are you gay or something?" And I just said, "Oh, I'm queer," and somehow the entire half of the other side of the room heard me. It's like, what? And so you know they know it, but do they know I have a boyfriend? Not yet.
Mhm.
Will it come out? Most likely. I just don't know when. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just being real with my students. Like as I get to know them, you know, it's a work in progress to make sure like they're comfortable with knowing about me, just as they are comfortable with me knowing about who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, again, it's all about boundaries. And it's like a veteran teacher told me, they're like, it's great for your students to get to know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to build those relationships. But it's also, they're learning as much as we are about boundaries. So when you feel like that boundary is crossing, they're the kids, they're testing it, or they don't really know where the boundary is. It's also like composing yourself, because like sometimes you have to be straight out and go, that was funny 5 minutes ago, but look at my face. Am I serious? Yes. Okay, then we're stopping.
Yeah.
And then you just move along, because it's still teaching them that boundary. Now you don't have to like start wagging your finger and being like, oh my God. Like, no, they didn't know that yet.
Right. And I totally agree with that. I had a situation earlier this week where, you know, my students are pretty cool with me, and they would like talk when they need to talk, when I let them talk, right? But there are times where like, hey guys, I'm talking, you guys shouldn't be talking, and they think that it's, you know, because they're still trying to test that boundaries, they think that it's okay when I'm talking to that they can talk, and so, you know, I don't want to say I snapped, but I did tell them, guys, not now. Do you think that's funny? Do you think it's funny? Right? And they would like, no, like, I don't think so. So let's just go ahead and focus. So again, going back to like tough love, like being firm and serious, but also like compassionate and all, because in the end, like you want to make sure that your student understand the policies and school classroom conduct, but also be, you know, themselves when the time allows them to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So now I want to jump into who's not cut out
Yeah.
for this. Who do you not recommend to go into this field?
That's a good question. If I have to think about that, it really have to be the person who can't handle kids, for one, right?
Or who don't like
who
kids.
don't like kids. And it sounds funny now, but in truth, like they do get to you, and the moment the kid
definitely.
gets to you, you will find yourself in a horrible place. And I'll be serious right now. I was in a serious place with kids prior to becoming a teacher. In fact, like I got into a situation where you know, student conflicts with me, and I'm not going to share too much about it, but I learned my mistakes from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of like me finding like ways to kind of like move away from the scene,
Mm-hmm.
I instead learn from it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you can't learn from the mistake that you did with the student or with yourself teaching the student, then you can't. I wouldn't say you're cut out for a teacher teaching.
You just
but,
won't be an effective
right?
teacher.
And plus, you're gonna have a hard time liking what you're doing. You're gonna waste your time. It's not good for the students. It's not good for you. And in essence, like if you don't like what you're doing with the students, again, it's a waste of time,
Yeah.
So
You're
for
just
me,
making yourself unhappy.
Right.
It's going to reflect to the kids.
Right.
You're going to make them unhappy.
right, exactly. And so, back to what I said earlier, it's, I learn from the mistakes that I have, and, kids make me happy. And that's why instead of like making excuses like why this situation happened to me, instead I learned from it. I took courses to like help me with how to deal with those situations. I took a credential. I'm taking my master's in education to really better myself, to learn why I love teaching so much. And if you don't like learning, if you don't like being in a classroom setting with students that can test your patience, like I said earlier, you're not cut out for it. And I mean that in like wholeheartedly nice and
for your happiness.
for your
yeah,
mental
for your
Their
wellness being.
happiness.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because in the end, like you said, if you're unhappy, it'll reflect to the kids. And when the kids see that, it'll...
It's game over.
And, in situation, it can go straight into, like, crazy... even to the medias and all that. And it can translate and, transpire all the way to that. So, again, if you want to be a teacher, you really have to have a lot of patience. And there are times where you may lose your patience, and that's okay. What you need to make sure you have after you lose your patience is that you know how to apologize and you know how to take accountability for yourself, because not only
Yes.
is it the students that's still learning and that needs to take accountability for themselves, but you also need to take accountability for how you dealt with it.
Correct.
Because if you never learn from it, you're never gonna
Yep.
progress as a better teacher.
Yeah.
You have. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say back to that whole like patience and everything, because as teachers, you're in a very powerful position. You are the adult figure in that child's life. Teachers spend more time with these kids than they do with their family. To be honest, you spend like 6-7 hours every single day, Monday through Friday, with them, and you see and hear everything on what's going on with their lives. So the moment you say something, it's not just words. They're literally things that could be life changing for a student. So really, for those who want to go into education, you really got to think about the student. You really got to think about wanting to learn, wanting to change as much as you want them to learn. And
Absolutely. And going off of that, it just reminds me of that one time this week. I have a student, really nice kid, love him to death. But he gets a little distracted in class. And, we were having a meeting about like which students need work in each class. Like, we have this student in common. Let's think about what he's doing. And I just remember I told him, hey, listen, I pulled him aside after class. Like, hey, listen, I heard from this class that you're not bringing a notebook. And you bring, you do your stuff in my class. Now, granted, you have a notebook in my class and I keep it. Why don't you go ahead and bring your notebook, to that other class? Like, oh, I lost it. Like, listen, bud, I know you can do better than that, So here's what I'm going to do. I gave him my new notebook, and I told him, listen, I want you to keep this in your locker, and I want you to bring it to class. I don't want to hear from your teacher that you're not bringing it, because I know I can count on you, and I know I believe in you. Do you believe in yourself? And it's like, yeah, I can do it. Like, good, because I believe in you so much that you can do this. Start bringing your notebook in, and you can do it. And it really changed him. Now he has a girlfriend. Like, oh, okay, well, good. At least like that small thing.
Brought my notebook.
All because I brought my notebook,
The
right?
key
And
to
granted,
education.
like his girlfriend's also sitting next to him in my class. Like, okay, so it's all in my class.
Yeah.
So it really changed him. And so when you think of teaching, any subject, there's more than just the subject that you're teaching.
Yeah.
You're teaching these kids life skills, You're teaching these kids how to, be responsible for themselves.
Yes.
And in
Critical
essence,
thinkers.
like the good karma will happen. Like now you have a girlfriend in my class who, by the way, I need to separate because they're talking way too much. But but it's good though because they also work together, work really well, and it's all because of that one instant that I accidentally put them together, and that one instant that I intentionally talked to him about bringing his notebook. And to be a good teacher, you want to be able to like connect with your student. You're not cut out to be a teacher if you can't connect with your student on that level. Okay. Obviously, you have to make some boundaries from yourself and him and them. But
Do you think you'll be invited to the wedding one day?
Oh my God, maybe. I tell them like they always see a ring on my finger. And they're like, Mr. Steven, that's in the wrong finger. It's like, guys, I'm not married yet. I don't have a fiance yet. And that's where the whole wipe comes in. Like, hey, like there are some other instances where they would ask me like, so where's your girlfriend and all that? Like, not talking about that, guys. Yeah, talking about this.
Be like, does this relate to cells? No.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No? I have to like, is this what we're talking about?
No.
Like So yeah. So again, like, for people who want to be a teacher, or you really have to have that compassion. You have to have like that connection with the student. Again, you're not. I don't want to say you're not cut out for it, but you're gonna have a harder time being a teacher if you have no patience. If you have you have no reason to like your students or kids in general. Because then you're just kind of making yourself miserable, and in the process, you're making your student miserable because now they're just wasting an hour of their restricted time in your class doing nothing but
book work
that they can't relate to, or people that they don't even want to talk to, or a teacher that they don't want to see. Like, it's just a waste of time for them. It's a waste of time for you, and in essence, nobody's really learning or winning in that point.
Okay, nice.
So I guess my final question would be, so when you get into the teaching, what should a brand new teacher expect to get paid? Like, what's the entry level? I know you're working in Oakland?
San Leandro.
Yeah. So what should a entry level teacher expect? Roughly.
When you say entry level, is that like fresh out of like
first year teaching?
First year teaching, because I know from what I understand is like you guys get paid on a year scale, like is a pay scale,
like this one of those like step scales.
Yes, how many years of teaching you do determines how much you get paid.
So step one, what's like?
Yeah, so step one, column one. At least for my district, they're around 70, right? But some district can pay even higher. Some district can pay lower, but a good area would always be around 70, maybe 65. And that's just like first year, right? If you're taking masters later down the line and you're starting to teach more, that will help you get into like the columns for how many post-bachelor courses load you've taken.
You get stipends.
Exactly. And then the more years you teach, the more you pay. But for a first-year teacher, you always want to like settle around 65 to 70 because that's like the kind of like the staple. Granted, there are some districts that actually pay way more than that, and that's great. But that also means that you have much to prove because that's how different they are. Like, if they're paying you a lot, they're probably expecting you to do a lot, and that just makes sense. Like,
I mean, but there are also some schools that pay a lot less.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so, would you say the district you're in is the area is a nice area, which is why maybe it pays a little bit like that well? Because I know a lot of teachers that have started at 50,
right?
Their first year. Do you think it has anything to do with the area you're in?
Yes and no. My area just happens to be, really good with that pay scale.
Because it's all about competition. Districts are so competitive when it comes to the pay scale because there's such a high need for teachers that like pay is like, you need to consider that like a livable wage. So districts, and especially if you're coming from like a very good district that's listening to the teachers, they want to be in the front line, or at least in the average, right, of that pay scale, so that they don't lose their teachers as well.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, what we're dealing with right now. You know, I think between Oakland, San Leandro, and Hayward, which is like all next to each other, they definitely have some competitive going on. And then there's Union City, which is next to Hayward. And, you know, Union City pays a lot more than where I am. A lot of people want to go to Union City or Milpitas because they pay a lot more. And rightfully so, because they live in, or that's an area where it's like a lot of, I want to say like richer people live, but like, you know, like
a higher income.
A higher income, exactly. And so, where I am right now, I think it's in a mediocre place where it pays well and I'm happy with it. But, you know, I think if you choose like somewhere else where there's like higher pay, it's like, yeah, it's definitely like a step above, and it's just great.
But they also provide the challenge of getting in there is a lot harder because,
absolutely,
you know.
Absolutely. Right now, I mean, maybe the challenge isn't as hard because there's like needs for teachers everywhere.
Yeah.
And the amount of times, like, you know, people would ask you like, hey, can you like take this class to like, you know, cover to substitute. The fact that normally a teacher would have one prep period to like, you know, to kind of like prepare and like, or sometimes just like de-stress.
Oh
right?
yeah, there's days where it's like, am I gonna print all the papers that I need for Tuesday, Wednesday, or am I gonna like, do I just need to sit in silence?
Absolutely.
Because the last period was just like, oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Right?
And so, you know, the pay scale really puts a perspective like how you're going to teach, because, you know, when you have only one prep and, you know, everyone, you know, like the district or the school keeps asking you to cover, it's nice that they want you to cover, because obviously because they also need their help, covering those classes. But, you know, sometimes it's also hard because that prep period, that one period that you have to kind of de-stress and like do all the things that you need to do to prepare for the other classes, it's the only time you have the entire day, because otherwise the only time you have is like recess or lunchtime and all that. And so the pay, like the amount of like
how much work you put in, because work technically does not stop, because then you go home and then you take the papers to grade.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Like I can easily work a 14-hour day, no problem. Well, no problem in the sense of like you easily can take home, not easily as in the work is easy.
Right.
But for the amount of work and passion and patience, emotional, physical toll, I always think teachers need to be paid more.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember you saying that in the very first podcast, and I even like recorded that and sent it to you. Like, I believe this so much. Like, teachers don't get paid enough. I remember when you said that, right when, you know, when I was listening to it, and right when you said that, I was working on my
papers. You sent me the video.
Yes, I was lesson planning at 8 p.m. And you said it like, I would be grading papers at 8 p.m. Like literally that's what I'm doing right now. And so like the pay scale is like, it's something that teachers like, you know, like teachers have to like be conscious about, and like administration have to be conscious about, because again, like you said, the work never stops. Just because school is over doesn't mean it's over for us. And the thing is, we don't get paid after school to do all those things, and yet
that's the price of being salary.
Exactly.
And I mean, it's a skill. It is a skill that you need to develop over the years to determine, you know what, I'm not taking work home. This is what I'm gonna. How do I use my prep time? That takes time, but never feel ashamed, especially as new teachers, to like go through the process of I'm gonna work 12-14 hours right now, just so that I can feel prepared for the next day or for the week. But 60, if you're in the 65-70, right, first year teacher, right, like it might not feel, it might feel a lot at first, because you're like, wow, that's a lot of money, right? Especially if you get like 11th or 12th month contract. But like over time you start to realize like you know what?
This ain't shit.
Yeah.
No, well, like
Yeah.
teachers should be compensated.
Absolutely.
Now, over time, right, years, at least for my pay scale, right, teachers, you can make six figures once you hit, I think, 18,
Yeah.
like 18
See,
years
that's
of
way
teaching.
too long.
Yeah.
To six,
And that
yeah.
that's why, like, you know, going back to it, like, it's so hard to say like teachers are getting paid, because they're not, because, you know,
Yeah.
and like going back to the previous question you asked me earlier, who not cut out for this. If you aren't cut out for like not only dealing with the students but also dealing with like the after school stuff that you
Yeah.
have to do,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, it's going to get to you, you know,
Yeah.
because there's so much more going on after school just as it is going during school.
Yeah.
Right? And so because it is a salary job, you know, sometimes you kind of think like, is this worth it? And that's a legitimate question that
Yeah.
every teacher always
Yeah.
asks, like, is this worth it? And to be honest, like, after 3 weeks of working as a teacher, I've had to ask myself that, like, is this worth it?
Yeah.
And you know what? That again goes back to your other question, why did I become a teacher? Well, because it's gratifying to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like, and maybe some people who work in like businesses that actually gain money, like
Mhm.
a lot of money, like, you know, that's great. But I
Yeah.
think like for me,
The gratification is
exactly.
different.
Is more the compensation.
Exactly. And so like,
Yeah. Someone
Me-
else could be, oh, I made these this amount in sales.
mhm.
But for us is, I had a conversation with a student today, and even though the week was hard, this
Mhm.
conversation was just like, this is why I'm teaching. I guess I'll do another week.
Absolutely.
I
And-
guess I'll stay
and
for
so-
another month.
Yeah, just kind of wrapping that up. It's like, I remember yesterday, actually. Yesterday, I was so done with the week. Like, it was a long week because we had like a lot of like, you know, investigations in lab in class.
Mhm.
The kids were going crazy. Now, granted, we were talking about energy, and so you guys had way too much energy, and you guys are starting to like piss me off and all that. But I didn't say that, obviously.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But you know, you guys are like way too much energy, and I can't handle you. Please knock it down. And they didn't, so I just kind of like snap on them. But rightfully so. It was like a regrettable but admittable mistake that I made,
Yeah.
and something that I learned from. But I remember yesterday, very last class, the very last 10 minutes of class, I was like, guys, I'm just so tired. I'm ready for a weekend. Like, can you guys just stop talking? One of my students say, Mr. Steven, did you buy lunch? Did you get food? Did you get water? Did you drink water? All that. And I just remembered in my head, the first thing's like, well, I didn't have that because I haven't gotten paid. Like, in my head, obviously, I haven't gotten paid yet. And I didn't really have time to eat. So maybe that is why I'm kind of cranky today. And it
Yeah.
just made me feel so it made me feel heard and seen that my students actually do care about me.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
even if like there are a situation for like financial situation or time situation or even like emotional situation where that you're dealing it with yourself, and sometimes it just kind of translate to how you teach or you present or execute the class to where the students notice that you're being emotional right now, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just happens. And so when my students asked me that, and I thought, wow, like, you know, I didn't realize how financially like affected I am and like how emotionally affected I am. But when they asked me that, like, I really do felt happy for a second, like my students care about me, because when she asked me that, the entire class started chiming in like, Mr. Steven, did you get enough sleep? Like, and I told them like, actually, no, I only had 3 hours of sleep last night.
Yeah.
And so
Trying to help you, motherfuckers.
exactly. I mean, like, that's pretty much it, because I stayed up like last night until like 2 o'clock, like making sure that they have the right lesson for tomorrow,
Yeah.
because I only have an hour to like prepare for my first class, and normally I use that time to kind of relax and just make sure that everything is set up,
Mhm.
but I don't have to worry about like fixing things during class, and I don't like that. It does happen, but like, you know, so
Yeah.
in essence-
Are you also paid once a month?
Yes. So for teachers, I think they go by like once a month, the end of the month, and they
Yeah.
kind of calculate how much you work throughout, you know, subbing and obviously your normal pay.
Yeah.
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 Pretty much.
Well, one last thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Are you able to balance work and have a life because of the fact that you guys work 14-hour day? You're working from, I know our day starts at 4:30 in the morning,
Mhm.
right? We get up at 4:30, and because it's her, right? So we get up at 4:30 in the morning, and we're
right now.
she's not done until 8-9 o'clock at night, right?
Mhm.
And I'm just like, okay, like I'm sleepy, like.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So like, how are you able to balance?
In a way,
you know?
yes. In a way, yes. It takes some time to like get used to like the flow of thing. I'm a full-time student and a full-time teacher, so having to do 3 classes, which is a very big very big course to take right now, especially as a full-time teacher. I think finding that right balance. So during prep time, I would take that time to do one homework. Even if I don't finish that homework, I have to at least make a dent to it. On the weekend, I don't try to do as much homework because I tend to like go to here with you guys, to Mark's, because I want that one time to like,
to
or
relax.
even like a day and a half to just relax and be with my boyfriend, all those things, or like be with friends and be here, right? And then during the weekdays after school, and if there's a meeting going on, I would stay after, prepare. After that, I would go straight home or straight to the gym, to work out, and then go straight home, start preparing. And by the time I'm finished preparing and getting ready for tomorrow, it's around 1 a.m. And so I would wake up at like 5, so I would only have 4 hours of sleep. So it does trickle into, your day-to-day life, and which is why my student asked me like, are you getting enough sleep, all those things. But again, it's so gratifying to like be able to do all these things, and so having to manage and juggle that, it's definitely hard, but it's not impossible.
It's a skill that
exactly, it is a skill. And
do you feel like you learn to prioritize? You're like able to be like, you know what, this is just not worth my time. And you've been able to, because I feel I've seen with Josie that she's grown a lot with like, this is not worth my time, and I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna put that effort and emotion into it because it's just gonna drain me. And it's just not worth it.
Oh yeah, I mean, for the basics of it all, I play a lot of computer games all the time, but I just don't have time for it. And it's not like it's a waste of time. It's a good thing to like de-stress every once in a while.
Definitely.
I did that last night because I was like, you know what? Finish all my homework, or majority of my homework. I'm done with the week for today. I'm just gonna de-stress, and so that that video game time was like important to me.
Yeah, definitely.
But during the week where I'm like super stressed, that's like not worth my time. It's not worth my time. And then things like now usually I do a lot of cleaning my house. I still do, but I'm just so focused. I know I can do that later. This is not worth my time right now. I'm gonna prioritize something else, which is homework or lesson planning for the next day. So like you said, it's a skill that you need to develop or have developed already. To be able to like kind of juggle these things. So like juggling social life, school life, work life, love life, all these things. It's tough, but it's not impossible. You just have to make sure you know what you're doing and what to do, to kind of like make it work. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steven.
You.
That was I think it's really important to hear, especially from teachers, because I know this is such a hard thing, and so many. It's like we all go to school,
right?
And so I'm just was really excited to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely. I was so excited when you guys first came out. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And then I first heard the first episode. I was like, oh my god, I gotta be on it. So I just told you. Well, I didn't really tell you like I want to be in it yet, but I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so when you invited me, I was like, absolutely.
The second you messaged me, I was kind of excited. I'm like, because I wanted this dynamic, right? I wanted to hear from both of you and like how you guys are gonna collaborate with that. But thank you again so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks for tuning in and hearing from Steven.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.